Hey Ken, do you want to play a game?
No, I don't have time for games. I think I'll just review the 4K of Saw. What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Mid-Level Media channel. I am Ken, here today for another 4K review, and this time I am reviewing the newly released Saw 4K by Lionsgate. So this came out this week, and I got a chance to watch it last night, and yeah, we're going to talk about it here in a second, but before I do that, I want to ask that if you all have not yet subscribed to the Mid-Level Media channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I do all kinds of great, amazing content on this channel, mostly centered around the world of physical media. I do reviews, I do Blu-ray hunts, I do physical media updates every single week, so definitely tons of content if you're a Blu-ray and 4K lover, so hit that subscribe button, and also be sure to hit that like button as well. All of those likes will help this video move up those YouTube algorithms and allow more eyes on this channel, and I would definitely appreciate it. And also, comment down below your thoughts on Saw or this 4K release. If you have it, if you've watched it yet, what do you think of it? Leave all of that in the comment section below so we can have a conversation. Let's get into this movie, guys. And as I do with all of my reviews, I'm gonna break down the movie, just my thoughts on the movie. I'm gonna give the movie a score, and then we're going to talk about the visuals. We're gonna talk about the audio. We're gonna talk about those special features. We're gonna talk about the packaging itself. And then I'm gonna give my overall recommendation of whether or not I recommend that you purchase this release or not. So getting into the movie itself, Saw is a 2004 horror film directed by James Wan and written by Leigh Whannell and James Wan. They were collaborative partners, both from Australia. Leigh Whannell, if you do not know, has actually recently got into directing. He directed Upgrade, which in my opinion is one of the best science fiction action films of like the past 20 years. And then you have The Invisible Man that he recently did as well. So he and James Wan have been collaborating for years since this movie. Well, I mean, before that, they went to college together. They've done tons of great things together. They worked on the Insidious films together, Death Sentence, Dead Silence. Just, they're great collaborative partners, and this is where they got their start. So the movie is also starring Carrie Elwes. We've got Danny Glover. We got Monica Potter. Leigh Whannell also stars in this movie as well. Tobin Bell. The movie has a stacked cast across the board. And as for a brief synopsis, a morally obsessed serial killer forces his victims to play horrific games of torture and survival. So getting into my thoughts on this movie, guys, I have never been the biggest Saw fan, at least of the franchise. I've always enjoyed this one of them all, and I think I enjoyed 2 and 3, but to be honest, I have not seen most of them since the theater. But I remember the first one came out when I was probably like 19, so through my 20s, a Saw movie would come out every single October, and it was like event viewing. Like, that is the type of horror that popped in that era of 2000s. That's why I always reference the fact that I just wasn't the biggest fan of this type of horror, but I've always been a horror fan, so it was horror. I would go to the theater every October and watch the new Saw film, and it did feel like an event film every single October. So I appreciate it for that. I've just never really loved the films or ever really felt the need to return to them all. So I've seen most of them just once, except for this one, which I've seen, I'd say probably about 4 or 5 times. But like I said, never been the biggest fan of this movie, but I do think that this movie is pretty solid. And a lot of that, I think, has to do with the collaborative partnership of Leigh Whannell and James Wan. And also partly because this movie has a legitimately good cast. You have guys like Carrie Elwes, you have Danny Glover, you have Monica Potter. They all bring a certain level of credibility to this production and weight and gravitas to this low budget kind of shock horror film that wouldn't be there if they were not a part of it. And even Leigh Whannell, you know, he's not the greatest actor. You know, I think this might have been his first movie that he was ever in. In fact, I'm pretty sure it was. He might have been in some shorts or low budget films in Australia or whatever. He does a pretty good job of the material that he's given, especially with selling that big final moment. Just as for the gore, this movie delivers. There's some really good gore in this movie. I mean, this is the movie that kind of started the whole torture porn era of horror again. This one isn't as bad. It doesn't lean as much into the gore as some of the later ones were, at least to the point where it feels gratuitous. There are some really good scenes, in particular the climax of the movie where, spoiler alert, I'll give a slight spoiler here, but when Cary Elwes saws his foot off. It's such a great payoff to this movie, and it just, they foreshadow it at the very beginning of the film, and it's just awesome that it pays off in the way that it does. And it is a fantastic scene, both the way that Cary Elwes sells it as an actor and also how Leigh Whannell sells it, having to witness him doing that. So that's a fantastic gore scene in this film that is just shot and presented in just the best way. This also has one of I don't think the movie itself to me doesn't reach that iconic horror status, but the score in this movie by Charlie Clouser it has to be one of the most iconic horror scores of all time. Like, this is one of the best. Like I said, I don't love the movie, but this score, absolutely fantastic, and it elevates the film in every single way. Like I alluded to earlier, there is a great, fantastic twist ending. I don't want to spoil it because if you have not seen it, again, it's a 17-year-old movie, but if you have not seen this twist ending, I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's really great. And for me, like, I remember watching this movie in the theaters. I didn't really enjoy it. I don't remember enjoying the movie in the theaters. I thought it was crap, to be honest. And we'll get into some of the negatives here in a second. But and then when we got to the end and that reveal, not really a twist, but more of a reveal, it just recontextualized everything that came before it in that film and just made it make a lot more sense as to why they would make some of the decisions that I thought were stupid during the movie made sense because of this twist reveal at the end, and it made it a better movie for me. As for the negatives, I just really don't like the way that this movie is shot. I don't like the way it's edited. It's very glitchy camera work, very choppy editing. It feels very amateurish, especially considering it's James Wan. He's done some of the best modern horror films of all time. You look at the direction that he does in the Conjuring movies, in Insidious, just creating and cultivating this very creepy atmospheric environment, and just the camera work in those movies is stellar and just spot on. You see none of that here. This is not a good prelude for what would come. It's not very indicative of the great filmmaker that he would go on to become. To me, it just feels very amateurish and very low budget. And again, I think it is a stylistic choice by Wan. It's just something that he was experimenting with back in the day, and they wanted to make something that was truly different. And I'll give it credit for that. It feels different. It feels unique and original. It's just, I really don't like it. And there's just too much of that slow down camera work and everybody's giant. It just feels very disorienting, and it's never been a style that's really resonated with me. There's also, and I didn't even realize it until I rewatched it again, I know this franchise gets very convoluted in the later sequels. That's what kind of brings down my enjoyment of it. It gets way too much up its own ass with its story and just how much story it wants to keep injecting just to keep this franchise moving. I didn't realize that they did that a lot in this one. This one really has way too much story. They try to explain way too much. And again, some of that goes into that reveal at the end and does set up for that payoff, but I do think there's just way too much story. There's way too many side characters and subplots, and they're trying to tell the story non-linear as well. Like they're jumping back and forth between times, but they're not telling you they're doing that. And then like you're just supposed to like realize that they're doing that. But I don't feel like they do a good job of presenting it to make you truly understand like what time period you're in. So at the end of the day, guys, for a movie, again, like I said, it's not one of my favorites, but I would say it's probably my favorite Saw movie. I would give this a 3 out of 5. Again, I don't think this is a great movie at all, just the whole way through, but that twist ending at the end, that reveal, really does a lot to elevate this film and bring it back up for me. And then that great horror score. And then the cast in this movie is also really solid. So I will give this movie some credit, and I will give it a 3 out of 5. So moving on to the visuals, guys, as far as I'm concerned, this looks great. I think this is absolutely worthy of a 4K upscale. It is an HDR, so you really notice some of those colors in it. You know, when they're in the holding cell, there's a real like bluish kind of color palette and tint to it, and it looks great in 4K. And also, like, all the murder scenes are usually shot with this really like green tint around it as well, so that looks fantastic as well. And then you have some reds and some purples as well. So this is a very colorful film, just how it kind of presents certain scenes and moments with the different colors and stuff. So, and I think it all looks great in 4K. So one thing I will say, again, you know, I feel like I've been bringing this up a lot lately though with the film grain. This was shot in 35mm back in 2004. So there is a lot of noticeable grain. So again, if you don't like the grain, I don't really mind it, especially for a movie like this, a grungy, grimy horror film from the early 2000s. I've never minded the film grain, and I especially don't mind it in this film. As for the audio, it is in Dolby Atmos. So again, I feel like I've been saying a lot of movies aren't in Dolby Atmos lately. This has a Dolby Atmos track, and I'm not set up to experience that, so I can't speak on it fully, but it sounded great on my soundbar. All of the sounds were super sharp and crystal clear. Going into the packaging, guys, this is a real highlight for me, and a lot of people are saying that the steelbook is what they went with. I think the steelbook has a fantastic design, but I just really dig the artwork on this one, just how it feels like, or looks like it was hand drawn on there. It says greetings and welcome on the top of Jigsaw's head right there. And yeah, I just think this is fantastic artwork, and Lionsgate is just super underrated with their slipcovers, in my opinion. I just love the way they lay it out there. And inside, you know, we have the disc, and they both have their own original unique disc art. Like the 4K has some really cool like greenish jigsaw puppet artwork on it, and then the Saw Blu-ray is really some nice artwork as well. So yeah, I think the packaging is really solid overall. And then getting into the special features, there is nothing new in this new set, but one thing I will note is the fact that the big special feature was this, which is that Game Changer, The Legacy of Saul. It's a really solid hour-long special feature that is on the 4K as well as the Blu-ray, so it's nice to have that special feature in 4K, because usually you don't get a lot of the special features on the 4K disc itself, and then you had the audio commentaries and all of that stuff that's on the 4K. And then the rest of the special features, you have the original short film, the one where Lee Winnell's in the little head trap contraption thing, and then hacking away at Saul, some alternate storyboard sequence, theatrical trailer. Again, none of this is new. They're all on previous DVD and Blu-ray releases, but it is nice to have that one special feature in 4K. So I will give it credit for that, even though it didn't have anything new to bring to the table to this release. So overall, guys, I gotta say this is a super solid release, and I gotta bring price into it a little bit, because this is only $16.99 at Best Buy right now, and I think it is an incredible price, and on Amazon as well. I think that's an incredible price for a new 4K release, and especially given just how awesome the packaging on this is as well. Like, you don't see Universal and Warner Brothers doing this kind of artistic stuff with their packaging, at least lately. They've definitely done it in the past, but I think this is a really solid release, guys. I think it's a definite buy it right now, especially if you are a fan of this movie. And you could always wait for the sale, but you know, it's a good price right now. Absolutely recommend picking it up. But let me know in the comment section below if you bought this. What do you think of the 4K? What do you think of the movie itself? Be sure to comment down below. Also, like this video, guys, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Turn on those bell notifications for all future videos, and we'll see you next time.